This is Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast, episode 138. Today we talk about a master or mother polarity of masculine and feminine energy and how you can leverage this powerful force. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast. This is the only podcast that shows you how to leverage polarity intelligence, an essential competency for healthcare leaders, and the missing logic in healthcare, so you can create healthy, healing organizations and become a thriving, resilient, and unstoppable healthcare leader.
We are your hosts, Tracy Christofferson and Michelle Trosett. We've been best friends and colleagues for over 30 years. And during that time, we coached healthcare leaders across North America around how to create healthy, healing organizations.
Today, we coach healthcare leaders and leadership teams to live thriving, resilient, and balanced lives, combat burnout, and create the best places to give and receive care.
This podcast is for the unsung hero of healthcare, the healthcare leader. We want you to know we see you and we'll be here for you each week. In this podcast, we're going to challenge healthcare's industry norms, flip limiting beliefs, and share proven strategies so you can be your best self at work and at home, live and lead intentionally, and experience well-being and joy.
We are glad you are here and look forward to sharing the journey with you. If you aren't totally convinced this podcast is for you, just listen to a few episodes and convince yourself. Well, hello, everyone. This is Michelle. Welcome to another episode of Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast. And I am black and white today. I'm white and black.
She's a little confused at what colors she's wearing.
Because I'm looking at her.
Both. She's both, and I'm the opposite. And this is Tracy. Welcome back. We're happy to be with you today. It's been one of those kind of days.
It has been.
It's been a very full day already.
Full day and a lot of energy shifts happening.
Oh, lots of energy going on here. It's a perfect day to be talking about what we're talking about today, right?
It is. It is. So today we're going to be talking to you about what we call a master polarity or a mother polarity. And it's one that really transcends and includes multiple of polarities. And so we're going to be talking about that at the end of the podcast episode. And every human being has a little bit of masculine energy and a little bit of feminine energy in them. So we all have it, folks. And it's to cultivate polarity intelligence. It's really important to be aware of both energies in yourself so that you can recognize it in other people as well.
Yeah. And, when we talk about it as a master or a mother polarity, it really indicates that there are other polarities that align underneath this polarity. So we're going to be talking about all of those as well.
Yes.
And there's some misperceptions about feminine and masculine energy. And there's some perceptions that feminine energy really only sits with a woman and that masculine energy only sits with a man. But that's not true at all. As Michelle said, we all have it. And it really seeks to be balanced, just like every other polarity, right? Mm-hmm. That energy seeks to be balanced, and that's why today is really important. And there's consequences, just like in any other polarity, if you don't balance this. And it really aligns right with the yin and yang symbol. So when you think about the yin and yang symbol, the black and white circles, you'll see a little bit of the white in the black and a little bit of black in the white. So there's a little dark where there's light and light where there's dark. Because they're so interdependent and it's such an interconnected relationship. So we have a little bit of both, and it's just really, really important to find the balance between these two. They have a significant impact on you, and you really kind of intuitively know when you're out of balance with this.
Definitely.
You can tell. When you're aware of it, you can tell. If you're not, you may not.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people probably aren't aware of this,
yeah.
Right? This energy of the masculine part of you and the feminine part of you and how they're both really so important. Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about how these energies can show up and how when there is an overemphasis on one and neglect of the other, how it can be a contributing factor to burnout. And because there is this lack of balance that occurs with this particular energy field. And then we're also going to show as we go through, of course, we'll banter a little bit about how they show up for us, for Tracy and myself. And this is an ongoing polarity that we're always managing as well.
Well, we're opposites.
Yeah.
See, just
Guess who's who?
yeah. So you guess. Just take a guess. Yes, I am the more heavily masculine energy. I lean into a lot of the positive attributes of that. It's gotten me where I am today.
Yep. And I lean more into the feminine, and I've really have benefited from that.
Yeah, and you know what? I think we both experienced the downsides of being overemphasized,
Yes.
right? So I've just spent the last 6 months with coaching on increasing my feminine energy. I mean, once you become aware, you need, you can just tell you need more balance. And it doesn't just happen, folks.
No.
You have, like any other player, you have to be vigilant about it.
Yes.
Right. So, it's been really great. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah. It has been great. It has been great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is, again, all about that balance.
Yeah, it is. Now, if you're like most healthcare leaders today, you're feeling anything but balanced.
Exactly.
Right. And, if your masculine and feminine energy, are unbalanced, then some of those energies become dominant, like we said, right? Sometimes your environment influences what you're leaning into. And today, both are being called for in healthcare, right? There's a lot of need to do. And at the same time, there's a lot of need for compassion, right? And for some of the feminine energies. So both are being called for. And our intention today, this is a big, broad topic. And we could go really broad with it, but we're trying to stay focused on the individual today. We want to just shine a light on these energies, how they show up, the need to balance them. One is not more important than the other. One is not, you don't want to, you got to be able to flex with what is needed in the environment that you're in the situations that you're in with these energies. But we're wired to have both, and we need to have both. To be healthy human beings, right? It's just a part of who we are. So we really need to pay attention to that. And especially right now. Especially
now. Because every tired, exhausted, and conflicted healthcare leader has these masculine and feminine, energies that can be leveraged to bring more balance to your life. So Tracy said our intention today is just to introduce this as a broad topic, but we want you to know in the future, we want to bring other guests on, and we want to even explore this in a bigger way of how it impacts your healthcare organization, the world. I mean, there's just so many. The environment. Yeah. There's the
history of it.
A lot of different things.
A lot of things to talk about here. We could get really woo-woo with this. We're trying to keep it kind of, even. We're trying to keep it a little bit even here. A little balanced, right? But here's the challenge, right? Is you're living in an unprecedented time and going through changes and challenges that you've never experienced before as a healthcare leader. No playbook for how to manage a pandemic, for how to manage and support and deal with prolonged exposure to trauma and death, how to support clinicians that are being exposed to those things that, you're just facing things you've never faced before. And so you're exhausted and burned out and traumatized, right, by all of this. Everybody is right now in healthcare, I think, at all levels, from the clinician to the CEO, right? You're all dealing with this. So we just got to pause and recognize that you're in a unique situation. And so pausing and getting clear on how these energies are at play and how you can leverage them to support yourself can be a real advantage.
Yeah, a real gift. Yeah, absolutely. So we know, because we listen to, leaders every day, that many of you have been working around the clock, some for weeks and months. You're taking assignments that you never thought you'd be taking. Just going in at all times of the day and the night, you've just been dealing with this, right? And so both of these energies are being called upon right now. And what we know is if you don't realize the positive outcomes of both, you can end up experiencing the negative outcomes of both. So it's really important. You can feel just so depleted right now if you're not leveraging both the masculine and the feminine energy in a positive way.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what the positive attributes are of both of these. And, we're uniquely designed to have both. So we want to leverage both and we want to get the best of both and know when to apply, when to use one energy more than the other when it's called for, right? Mm-hmm. And what that looks like. Like, what does masculine energy look like, right? Well, really, when you're in that energy, you're kind of a thinker, right? Like you do some logical thinking, a lot of brain work, a lot of in your head. That's me. You're a good planner, right? You plan things out, strategize. And you're just kind of structured, more logical, that type of thing. Yep. Even maybe more bold, maybe more of a risk taker, things like that, right? Like you have a lot of that kind of, I don't want to say, it's just more of a forceful energy, right? It's more of a more of a powerful energy. Yeah. That's just kind of.
Where leaders who lean more towards the feminine energy are more feelers. And they tend to lead with the heart, have big hearts. They're dreamers. That's me. Visionary, love to connect with people. Oh, my goodness. And are very flexible, are kind of open with the openness and the flexibility. It's kind of a comfort place. And very intuitive when it comes to their professional and personal lives. So, but like any other polarity, it's important to know your preference pole and where you lean because of that balance.
Yeah, and that is essential.
Yes.
So we're going to give you some tips towards the end and how to kind of pay attention to that because it really is important. And really, historically, the feminine energy has been squashed, like from way, way back. It's a very powerful energy, but it really has been downplayed and really tried to be eliminated, like way back from the burning women at the stake kind of a thing, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of history around this that we won't go into, but it's building up now and building up, right? And it just shows up in a lot of different ways. And so it's just really important to recognize that and know that. And I think too, as we said, if you over-focus on one to the neglect of the other, there's consequences. And at the individual level, you can, if you over-focus on your masculine energy, right, you can almost paralyze yourself because you're overthinking things. So you can kind of get stuck, right? Mm-hmm. The other thing is you can kind of become guarded. You're not vulnerable with people, so you kind of withdraw, kind of hold yourself back, maybe not share as much, right? Close your heart off a little bit, right, to just power through. You can become impatient and you want to have more control, so you can have this sense of needing to control things. And you can miss opportunities, right, to see things from a different perspective, or you can miss things in being rigid and not flexible. So those are kind of some of the downsides of overemphasizing the masculine energy, not balancing it with feminine.
Yeah. And you can also have too much feminine energy as well. So if you really take that on and that's where you're primarily focused on, you can be caring how everyone else feels, even more than yourself. You're just worried about everybody else. And people pleasers, people who are very on the downside of feminine energy, really care about pleasing everybody else, even when it's not aligned with what their own heart wants. It kind of even goes against who they truly are, but you are so compassionate, you're always thinking about other people and people pleasing. The other is that flexibility can get you in trouble with boundaries on the feminine side. You can have trouble with boundaries and saying no and being really clear of what you have to say no to so you can get things done. So that's another negative outcome of having too much feminine energy. And this is really showing up in the pandemic too, with just compassion fatigue, right? And caring so much for your team and caring so much for everybody else that you actually get fatigued from that. And also having guilt, like that survival guilt feeling too, really comes up for a lot of leaders.
Well, and we didn't mention this, but when it comes to the overemphasis of masculine energy during the pandemic, that's showing up as burnout. and exhaustion.
Oh, yes.
And overwhelm.
Yeah.
So, both of them are showing up in different ways, and you may even be experiencing both.
Both.
You can be in the downside of both at the same time. So,
absolutely. In fact, I think when we started really diving into this energy, masculine and feminine, with the pandemic, there are a lot of leaders that are on the downside of both, right?
Yeah.
I think classically with what you hear, compassion fatigue, burnout, so both of them are there. Mm-hmm. Both of them are there. So it's really important, as with all polarities, is to be able to access both energies when you need it. And no, I really got to move over to the masculine side now because of what's right in front of me right now. And then knowing when to flex back to the leveraging and tapping the feminine energy. And just like any other polarity we always talk about, it's not about 50-50. It's being aware of it, knowing how to leverage it, and really how to dance with it.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. And, as we've said, this masculine, yang energy and the feminine yin energy are polarities. I mean, this is a polarity.
Yeah.
And it's an interdependent pair, right? And so, if you've been listening to us, we've been working with healthcare leaders to help to introduce them to, polarity intelligence, which is pillar number 2 in our dynamic balance effect framework. And, we help them really understand how these naturally occurring polarities are at work all of the time. And this is just another example of how this is acting within you and outside you and around you. And it's essential to gain that balance, right? And so there, as we said early on, this is a master polarity. So, or a mother polarity, which means there's many layers of this underneath. And so Michelle's going to talk a little bit more about what those are.
Yeah. So, and you'll recognize them right away when I tell them. You'll go, oh, that makes so much sense. And some of these we've talked about on other podcast episodes. So one of a major polarity that sits under the feminine, masculine is doing and being. So this is something else that leaders really are working to balance all the time. And when you think about it, doing is about action. It's the act of doing, so it really aligns with the masculine energy, where being is more of that state of being, and that's more aligned with the feminine. And so it's very connected to the masculine and to the feminine energy as well.
And what we're seeing is there's a lot of doing and not a lot of being right now. So that really puts you at risk to overemphasize that masculine energy, right? People think, I don't have time for myself. I can't take a day off, right? Those kinds of things are showing up. And that's a sign of overemphasis, and it's not that the doing isn't needed. But again, you got to complement it with times of being in order to fill yourself up with the energy that you need to do the doing.
Mm-hmm. Another polarity under this one is competition and collaboration. So, competition is always about being the best and winning. And so that's very aligned with the masculine energy.
Go team.
Go team. It's all Tracy. Go team. Or we should make a contest out of this.
That's right. Because it motivates people.
It does. And then, of course, collaboration is sharing with others. Let's do this. Well, maybe we should invite this person to come.
That's right. Wouldn't it be great if we had this?
So that's another common one.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is productivity and relationships. And again, productivity is very related to getting tasks done. Mm-hmm. And relationships is really nurturing others. And so that's another common one. Of course, we've talked before how Tracy's more productivity and I'm more relationships. So again, we're a walking polarity.
Mm-hmm. There you go. And right now, right now, it's about productivity, right? It's about serving those patients. It's about staffing. It's about getting the work done. And in that plate, like the relationships can fail, right? Because we're so transactional. We're so heavy focused on getting the stuff done. And if we're spending too much time on the relationship side and taking care of everybody and supporting everybody and not getting the work done, right, there's a downside to that too, right? So this really requires a great deal of balance right now. And it's both are being called for heavily.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then the last one we wanted to share with you is giving and receiving. That's another one that's very much aligned with the masculine and feminine. So The giving is all about putting out and giving, and then the receiving is more taking in, which is more the feminine energy. And this one too is people have been just really giving of themselves, giving their time, giving their energy. So all of them have been really more masculine focused when you think about it during the pandemic. So we got to
That's why we have burnout, exhaustion.
Yes.
Right? A lot of that. That's why we're having a lot of that.
So we need to put steps into place to realign.
Yeah. So you're probably out there going, and so what do I do? So we're going to give you a few tips here. And then, we're going to be going into this more and more as we go along. But here's a few things that you can think about doing when it comes to, if you're like me and tend to lean into the masculine energy, here's a few things you can do to increase the feminine side of your energies, right? And one is just to spend more time in the being side. So just being more intentional about that, setting aside even 10 minutes to just be quiet and be still. Meditation is good. Mm-hmm. Just taking 10 minutes to just daydream. Just let your mind go, right? Just daydream a little bit. Just having that kind of quiet time, that silent time. Another is use your creativity. Do something that really generates creativity, whatever kind of little project, or maybe just coloring, or, and just engaging in painting or something that just kind of releases some creativity for yourself. That kind of gets that energy flowing in you. Another thing is tap into or develop your intuition. So a lot of times when you get quiet, you give enough space for your intuition to show up. But, just kind of sit and think, what's my gut about this? And we've heard other leaders have said, I really had to lean into my gut, which is a feminine energy, because there wasn't a playbook, right? So I had to follow intuition. So that's another example of, kind of really developing that. And if you don't feel like you have intuition, really just look into how you can kind of just take little exercises around developing that, just kind of lean into what's my body telling me? What am I really feeling? And that's where your intuition shows up. So kind of leaning into that more than the logical thinking brain side of things.
And then were you going to do the next one?
Well, I certainly can.
You're not done, masculine.
Well, I take a breath and look what happens. Now she's getting kind of masculine there, isn't she? Giving me a little direction.
We'll get back to the episode in just a minute. We know these have been extremely challenging times, and when you stepped into your leadership role, you made a commitment to your organization and to the people you lead. We know how important it is to you to support them, and they need your support. Let us ask you, can you pour from an empty cup? Obviously, the answer is no. However, that's what you are doing every single day when you put your staff first and neglect caring for yourself. When you are putting your staff and their needs before your own day after day, how often do you end up feeling tired, resentful, and drained of energy? Let's face it, you can't be a strong leader or care for others if this is how you are feeling. Caring for yourself is equally important as caring for your team. Actually, it is essential. That's why we created the self-study program titled Caring for Others Without Neglecting You. In the self-study program, you will learn a proven strategy to help you balance taking care of yourself while still supporting your team so you can be your best self at work and home, experience more joy, and have more energy for the things in your life that matter most. It takes less than 3 hours to learn the strategy and start to put it into action. Go to missinglogic.com/new-events and enroll now.
So that was Michelle exercising her masculine energy there, right? Like, you're not done. Come on, go on with the rest.
Get on with it.
All I did was take a breath. I was trying to be silent and feminine. Look what she did. No. All right. So how do we increase our masculine energy? Well, spend time planning. Like, really, think out, like even just planning out your week. Planning out time for yourself. So if you're increasing your feminine energy with taking a little bit of quiet time, put it in your planner, right? Like, just spend time doing a little bit more planning your days or your time or events or different things. Just planning in general will help. Be bold. Like, really put yourself out there. Just be a little bit bolder. do something you wouldn't ordinarily do. Doesn't have to be major, can just be a baby step, something that pushes you a little bit outside your comfort zone, but just be a little bit bolder, a little more forceful with yourself, and take a little bold action. That'll help. And then again, strategize, use logic, maybe do a pros and cons list on something. That's kind of a logical way to look at something. And those things can kind of help if you're facing a challenge. Just kind of use more logic or strategize more.
Yeah.
Instead of just kind of going by the seat of flying by the seat of your pants, or just, going with the flow. Like stop, pause, and do a strategy for it. That's one way.
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple other examples just to build on what Tracy said. So to access your masculine energy, it's really helpful to create a plan to care for you, because we don't do that when we're like always going, right? So planning is really good when leaders have a written plan about how to have a balanced life. And we work with leaders, and they have told us it is so helpful to actually write this down and have a plan. And that's really tapping into that masculine energy because it's concrete. It helps you see what your next steps can be. So that's one thing. And an example of accessing your feminine energy is to really create a vision for the balanced you. And what will that look like? And sometimes that can be a stretch for leaders right now because you are so preoccupied with, so many different things. But it's been amazing when you pause and you spend that time to even vision, what do I want a balanced life to look like? What is most important to me? That really can come through if you set that time up for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. See, both in action together. And, so let's like cut to the chase.
Yeah.
Here's what you can do right now or very soon. If you're driving in a car or don't stop doing what you're doing in the moment. But here's something you can do. Okay. So it really starts with just observing yourself. Really just kind of paying attention to the kind of energy that you're using, the behaviors that you have, and what energy is behind that behavior. This is what I did. Hey, how am I showing up every day? What am I doing? Right? How much time am I spending doing? And what's not present in the other part of my life? Where do I have gaps in my personal life, my professional life? So just observe yourself and just think about it. Just really give some intentional time. That quiet time is helpful to just kind of let it bubble up. Just stop and ask yourself the question, okay, where are the gaps in my life? Yep. And where the gaps are, think about, okay, what energy is associated with that gap? So that's one thing that you can do. And then ask somebody close to you too. Ask your best friend, ask your husband or your partner or your spouse, whoever, is closest to you. Kind of what do you see from an energy perspective, and ask them those questions and they can give you some help. And then just take baby steps. What baby step can I take to increase the energy that might be a little bit more depleted and maybe reduce some of the energy that I'm using if I'm doing it excessively? If I've over focused on masculine, how can I dial that back a little bit while I increase the feminine energy, or vice versa? How can I dial back the feminine energy and maybe expand a little bit on my masculine energy so that I can get better outcomes, get the outcomes that I really want and feel more balanced?
Even saying that makes you realize it's a master mother polarity, right? It's kind of like a high up energy that's always at play.
Yeah.
And, if you feel out of balance, think about this particular energy field and this particular polarity. Because if you're not aware of it, you can really feel stuck. You can feel uncertain, and you can where's this coming from? And it might be this, right?
Oh yeah, it probably is.
Yeah.
It really probably is. You're probably out of, if you're struggling in your relationships, right? Relationships are heart-centered, right?
Yeah.
They come from, so if you're over-focused on the doing and your relationships are suffering, you don't have enough of the heart energy going, right? You don't have enough of that feminine relationship energy going, So that's just an example. Think about your relationships and just the different aspects of your personal and your professional life. And it'll give you great clues.
Yeah. And are you really leveraging this gift of having both and knowing when to tap into each of it so that you can be balanced?
Mm-hmm.
And when you recognize it and you can course correct, like with any other energy field or polarity, then you can really be balanced and feel good.
Yeah.
It's a good place to be.
It is.
It's a good place to be.
It is. Yeah. And you want to be able to tap them both because you don't know when it's going to be called for, right? And the more balanced you are, the happier you are, the more you have what you want.
That's right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's what our thriving, resilient, unstoppable leaders have, right? They leverage both the yin, feminine energy, and the yang energy when it's called for, knowing that sometimes they need to be a little bit more yang, Starting a business requires a lot of yang. Once you get rolling, you can bring in more yin, right? So, that's kind of where I'm at. So, I'm fortunate I have a partner that is the opposite of me, right? So I can lean into her energies, right? So it's the same thing with a true leader.
Right.
They recognize the energies, the dominant energies of the people around them. They leverage that, right? So it's not just all about you, but it's about how you leverage the people around you. And you're able to do that and you have that awareness. I think this is just really about being aware and then leveraging and understanding when you need to shift, how to leverage it. That's really what this is really all about. And that's what our thriving, resilient, unstoppable healthcare leader does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And we're going to do deeper dives.
We are.
On a more global level because this isn't just happening for you in healthcare. As a leader, there's a lot of shifts happening in our world, in our environment, in our country, so there's a lot going on here on a more global scale, and we're going to talk about that more in the future.
Yeah, future episodes on that.
But everything starts with you.
Personal level.
That's
Everything
right.
starts personally.
That's right. Nothing changes on the external until the internal changes. So.
That's right. That's right.
That's how it is.
Okay, so that wraps up another episode of Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast, and we are so grateful you joined us today. And, if you found this helpful, interesting,
insightful,
then leave some comments on our YouTube channel, share it with others. We're all about sharing. When people discover our podcast, they really appreciate it. So share it with others. If you found it helpful, insightful, others will too.
Pay it forward.
And we will see you on the next episode.
Yeah. Stay safe and healthy.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast, now a top-rated podcast for healthcare leaders. Please share this podcast with other healthcare leaders and anyone else you think would benefit. We are certain that if you found value in it, they will too. If you haven't already done so, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any episodes. And also, it would mean the world to us if you took a quick moment to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast player. It helps to get the word out about our podcast and incredible guests. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to watch our podcasts. You can also follow us on our Missing Logic social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Until next time.